Okay, so today we're going to be talking about another version of addictive biochemistry. And for those of you who have not followed any of our other videos, Alternative to Med Center, through its history, has found, and what has been extremely successful for has been addressing the physiology of addiction. And what do we mean by that? Well, addiction has mystified the best of the best. And, the images is you get some poor bloke who just can't regulate himself and just keeps going until his entire life is destroyed. And you have to ask yourself, wow, what was wrong with that guy's childhood? Or, what is so unsatisfying about his life? Or why does this guy or woman do this to themselves? And the wisdom of the big book, which those guys to me are the quality of their writing is right up there with the founding fathers in the Declaration of Independence and such. Just really like divinely inspired work just coming through these folks. As far as the spiritual components of addiction and how we run our lives and try to run other people's lives and none of it's actually running. All of that is still true. I don't want to denounce any of that. But I want to draw some very real light on, I guess the challenging question is like, why are some people drawn to opiates and other people are drawn to stimulants? Or why do some people just overfeel to the point where they feel they need to numb out? So today in our talk about heroin, we want to talk about, opiates as well. Not just heroin. It's still kind of the same drug, whether it's pharmaceutically driven or it's recreationally procured. But what's really going on with these folks? And it's many times you'll notice, of course, a heroin addict might steal from you, might do some bad things when they're needing a fix. Or, even somebody who's chasing after oxys or someone's in a chronic pain situation when they don't have their pain medication can have some pretty ridiculous things go on in their psyche. But by and large, what you're looking at are very sensitive people. People who are very sensitive to other people's emotion. So the neurochemical analog that opiates represent are endorphins and enkephalins. Enkephalins block pain. Like this ring on my finger, I don't even notice it's there, right? Because it just drops into the background. Now, if I were, let's say, coming off of heroin, my eyelids might hurt on my eyeballs because that soft touch would no longer feel like soft touch. It might feel like sandpaper, or the water in my shower might feel like bullets hitting my skin rather than water. There's neurochemicals that regulate sharp touch from, painful pressure, from pinprick sensation. It helps us differentiate that. When a person's low in enkephalins, everything hurts. So when people are coming off of opiates, there's a dip in their endorphins and enkephalin levels. That's what the legendary hell of these folks is. This is why they don't want to go into withdrawal, because they're already sensitive people, and having to feel that level of pain is like, ooh, heck no. So what we've noticed about opiate users is that many times the curious thing I hear is like, when I tried an opiate, I felt like myself for the first time. And that's a bit of I'm not a literary type folk, but it's an oxymoron would be the term I would use. Like, how can you feel like yourself for the first time, right? How would you even know it was yourself if it was the first time? But it's like, oh my God, I feel like whatever emotion I was feeling got shut off. So here's the theory. Endorphins block not only physical pain, but the amount of emotion we pick up of other people. So when I'm in a car, let's say, let's go with a closed loop analogy first. This is a closed loop. I touch somebody's finger and they feel my finger touching their finger. But I can't go like that and have them feel me touching their finger. It requires actually touching. That's a closed loop nervous system. But when I'm driving in a car and the person next to me has road rage and they're like, ah, you know, I feel something in my nervous system that feels like, well, unless I'm more refined, you know, feels like the same thing, like, ah, you know. Or if it's somebody that is turned on and wants my phone number, I get a whole different feeling, you know. There's this, emotions are transmitted over distance. The limbic brain that all mammals, meaning mammillary glands, have is the ability to feel that bonding and be pulled towards those survival things because of the bonding and love that's there, or to be repelled by things that are a threat. And we can feel that, whether a dog, whether a cat, whether a human, whether an ape, to greater or lesser degrees. Generally, humans feel a more complicated set of emotions, but animals also feel this as well. So when a person says, you shouldn't let other people affect you, I don't believe they're really speaking from the neurochemical pragmatic standpoint of how this really works. We feel other people's emotions from a distance, okay? Now, many of you have heard the term thin-skinned. That means you feel everything. And if you can feel everything, you are probably a great artist, because you can speak to those emotions and feelings in a way that has complexity and depth and richness and just all sorts of terrain, where people who are very thick-skinned and kind of like brick walls don't get it. Those same artists, those same sensitive people that can feel other people, when they become famous, it's a liability to them, because women probably know this more than men, but when you have a lot of scrutiny on you, you have people like putting your attention on you, you feel that, right? And if you're famous and you're feeling that all the time from all around you, and you're already geared towards feeling other people, it can be too much. It can be overwhelming. And the world itself, today's capitalistic American society, is not very kind to people who feel a lot. Because there's a lot out there to feel. There's a lot of bad things. There's a lot of hurtful things that are said and conveyed without much forethought. And people who really feel have a hard time with that. So what do? They self-medicate by numbing themselves out. It's natural. Because if you're feeling everybody's emotions, I mean, and it's a beautiful thing about the opiate user, is that they feel happy when people around them are happy. They feel anxious when other people around them are anxious. They're like a tuning fork in the room, amplifying any emotion that's around them. The unfortunate thing is it's hard for them to shut it off. So we want to give the users not just the psychological way that they can live their life different, like having a smaller emotional environment, getting the assholes out of your life. I mean, things that will definitely improve your emotional energetic space are very pragmatic. Being okay to say, hey, I don't really want you running up on me like that. Can you approach me in a softer way? Or being able to say, hey, I'm not good with this right now. Can you give me some space? All of those things are pragmatic. But there's also some things that are happening on the inside that can be addressed. So here's ways that you can pick up your endorphin levels. One, exercising. Exercising is great for picking up your endorphin levels. Cardio is great, but also the type of weightlifting that breaks muscle tissues. I mean, it's of course a lot of people have pain issues, and so maybe weightlifting is not going to be able to be their thing. But the more that you can have that natural endorphin release is going to kind of prime the pump. It's sort of like sucking up the... I mean, people self-medicate this exact disposition with exercise, sometimes to a fault. I mean, you can do anything too much. Another thing that's important is you don't build endorphins from sugar and simple carbohydrates. They're built from protein precursors. So whether you're vegan, whether you're carnivore, whether you're omnivore, you have to eat some protein-based foods to get the constituents that are necessary in order for you to build endorphins. Two of those are DLPA, which is also known as DL-phenylalanine, and also methionine are precursors for making endorphins, among others. But if you want to supplement with a few things, try those. If you're an anxious sort of person, a really anxious sort of person, you probably don't want to do the DLPA. You could do another version called DPA. It's just the D version. It recycles endorphins. It doesn't necessarily make them. But DLPA can also make excitatory neurotransmitters that might be too much for a person who's got too much anxiety. Walk into it slowly. Just try a little bit, and especially in the morning. Don't do DLPA at night because it could keep you awake. And number 4, this is big actually, is to reduce the amount of inflammation in the body. Now, how do you do that? Well, it's going to be some research. Inflammatory foods are foods that you're allergic to. A lot of people are allergic to nightshades. If you don't know what that is, look it up. Foods that are not ripe are suspect, like nuts that are not sprouted, foods containing leptins, things like that. And really the simplest thing is the food combining. If you take a fat like dairy and you mix it with a sugar and you put it together and call it ice cream, the transit times for those two things, one, it might be 4 to 8 hours before you emulsify all of that fat, and your stomach's going to hold on to it until you do. And that means all those sugars are going to sit in there. And what do sugars do? When they sit in a place fermenting, they expand, causing inflammation. That inflammation is going to deplete your endorphins, because otherwise it would hurt, right? The reason why you don't feel all of this expansion, you might feel a little when somebody presses on it, but it would be pretty dang painful. All of that intracellular inflammation would hurt, and you're burning up your endorphins. And when you're burning up your endorphins and you're already sensitive to the world, what are you going to do? Self-medicate with. Exactly. So another one, number 5, is sort of it's based more on the literature, but it's stopping smoking. According to the NIDA, which is the National Institute of Drug Addictions, smoking will, people who smoke are almost 4 times as likely to relapse than people who don't. The mechanism, I don't know. Maybe someone else listening out there has some ideas of what the mechanism could be. But a novel one that we have seen is that people who smoke, there's arsenic in cigarettes, and people with the endorphin deficient personality, we've done heavy metal testing on and found arsenic to be high. So the correlation between arsenic and endorphin deficiency has some clinical correlation. Maybe arsenic is a poison, toxin to the synthesis of endorphins. Don't know. Another sort of interesting thing is we're here in Sedona, and people are known to be very sensitive here. And feelers, it's sort of like it's more than foo-foo. I mean, people here really truly are sensitive and feel things in a kind of an uncommon way, and psychics and all that. Sedona is very high in arsenic. It's in the water. I mean, it's really, really in the water. So who knows? Maybe people are drinking the arsenic in the water, and that's what's making them sensitive. I don't mean to make it too physical, the phenomenon of spirituality, but who knows? Maybe that has something to do with it. And number 6 should be obvious, but I want to go into it a little bit more. Getting out of emotionally charged environments. And people who've been traumatized by either war, PTSD, or by sexual trauma, or by thinking, in any way that over a repeated number of times that they're going to die. Okay, what that does is it chips away at your endorphins. And a pragmatic reason would be, in order to survive, those situations, what do you need to do? You need to be able to perceive those threats more attunedly. So it chips away at your endorphin levels, because you're using up your endorphins, trying to buffer all of that, and trying to create an inhibitory space, a counterbalance for all that, threat. When you've dropped your endorphin levels to a certain point, what do? You feel threats more attunedly, so you can feel more keenly threats, so that it helps you survive, so it helps you avoid threats. So PTSD and other things might have a neurochemical correlation that is attributed to that. It's actually produced by the environment, and it may not have even started as a genetic disposition, but it became a physiological deficiency based on an emotionally environment that was dangerous. And so if a person's still like in a place where they feel like they're going to get beat up by their husband, or stabbed by their wife, or whatever the thing is, that just is not is threatening, or you just have people who are crazy all the time around you, try to get up out of that. Because if you're rebuilding your endorphins and you want them to actually tank up on you, you don't want them draining out the bottom like that. And of course, we're not denouncing any of the other applications for addiction. Staying away from the people, the places, the things, not getting hungry, all those things are very pragmatic. Doing some EMDR around the trauma, all that's great. But really, really, really consider looking at this physiology, because we've actually demonstrated it. I mean, seeing these folks, I want to take just a second to go into a story. I don't know how much time we have left because I can't see the timer. But this woman came in one time, and she had been traumatized in a way that was extremely uncommon. I mean, for the listener's sake, I don't want to go too deep into it, but she had experienced over 100 violations by the time she was 15. And this was at the beginning of my career. All I didn't even have any counselors around me, and I wasn't a counselor. All I had was a bag of vitamins, basically, and a healthy diet. And I told her that. I said, I kept a stable nervous system, even though I was wanting to jump out of the chair because it was such a horrific story. And she says, I said, I have no counselors to help you with this. I don't have any way. You can talk to me about whatever you want. I'll be present with you. But I don't have any solutions for your trauma as far as as a therapist would. And she says, that's okay. I've had 15 years worth of therapy and it hasn't done anything. And she was on opiates and wanted to come off opiates. So we got her off opiates using these exact things, right? This woman became so limbically solid, she was giving reflections to other people based upon all the therapy that she had that was very extremely astute. I mean, way spot on. When I had first picked her up at the airport, she was running with every single emotion around her, and now she was holding solid in her own emotional space. Like, what am I seeing here? It was phenomenal. What you would normally have attributed to being, wow, this woman's been really psychologically just lambasted. Suddenly you're seeing a complete antithesis of this, where you're seeing a person that's forged that into a whole different iron just from changing the physiology. Well, she was going home. Obviously, she couldn't go home to her family of origin, and she was also, at the time, living with a husband who was physically abusive to her and had 2 kids. It was like sending a beautiful bunny out to slaughter. I mean, I just figured, this is going to be bad. She went home. She took the 2 kids away from the husband, went and lived with his parents, and is still 10 years later, 12 years later, to this day, limbically solid, just from changing her physiology. I'm not saying it works that way in everybody, but that's an extreme case of where you would think it was a psychological thing, and actually it was all this. So anyway, I hope that helps some people, and also gives some people some ideas of what to expect as far as physiological and neurotransmitter repair that we do at the Alternative to Med Center. Thank you.